Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic interview show. This is episode 627. We've got a great guest. We have Robert Jacob, Director of WordPress at Cloudways. It's going to be a fascinating interview. I consider that Cloudways has kind of semi-revolutionized the hosting space to some extent. So, Jacob, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers of the WP-Tonic show?
So I'm just do a slight little edit for you. It's Robert Jacobi.
Jacobi, sorry. My fault.
We should have done that all in the in the prep and preview.
We should.
Robert Jacobi, Director of WordPress at Cloudways, which if you know anything about Cloudways or you don't, we sort of have three major business units, Magento, PHP, and then WordPress, sort of the Goliath in the corporation.
Unfortunately, Robert, my ability to balls up my guest surnames is notorious. Ask Stephen. Stephen, like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Yeah, my name's Steven Souter from zipfish.io, where we make WordPress fast by optimizing the code that's running your WordPress site.
That's fantastic. Fantastic company. Before we go into the main part of the interview, I just want to mention my major sponsor, that's Castos. As you know, Castos is the premium provider if you're looking to get into podcasting for yourself or for clients. I use it myself. I paid for it out of my own pocket. And then I got to know the Castos team. Obviously, Matt from the Matt Report joining them as Director of Sales and Customer Experience influenced me. But I've been just delighted with the platform, the UX design, and the superb support that you get from the Castos team. If you're looking to get into podcasting for yourself or for clients, you really should look at this platform. It really is superb and easy to use. They've also offered a special deal to the WP Tribe. If you go over to WP-Tonic newsletter, you'll find a unique offer just for you, Tribe. You get 50% off your first 6 months with Castos. And that's just a superb offer. Go over there, sign up, use their platform. So, Robert, like I said, maybe revolutionize is a little bit too strong a term, but it definitely Cloudways. First of all, how long has it been available, and when did it enter the market? And secondly, I think you could say that it's really kind of changed the hosting landscape to some degree. Would you agree with that, Robert?
Without a doubt. And, I hate being the, boy, we're so awesome, no one else does it like this, but we are doing it a little bit differently. So Cloudways is now, 10 plus years of being in business. And we started out with just building a management layer on top of DigitalOcean. And from there, we're like, we can do this across a whole bunch of platforms and then make it really easy to deploy WordPress on, AWS, Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, Linode, and Vultr. I knew I was missing one. So yeah, we support 5 different cloud providers, which is really unique across whether it's shared or managed hosting providers of WordPress. Almost all of them use one of those 5, but we actually empower our customers, which are developers, agencies, freelancers, to take advantage of all these cloud services without having to be a Genius system AWS certified engineer, which I come from a techie background and I've had to deploy an AWS, and oh my goodness, that is a pain in the 3 or 4 letter word, depending where you're coming from.
Yeah. Over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, I think Cloudways was probably one of the first companies where I was like actually owned the server, right? and I felt comfortable managing it. And that kind of like is one of my leaping stones into like, getting farther and farther into server stuff and, playing around with servers and installing things and, blowing things up and taking things down and figuring out what I did wrong. But like Cloudways was really like one of those jumping off points for me, like where there was somebody that was kind of holding your hand through it so you could make that jump without it being too scary. And that's like a beautiful thing, I think, when you have a platform that allows somebody to learn more and educate themselves as they kind of go along in a world that doesn't feel too scary, because you still have all this beautiful UI layer over it, everything. And it's really cool. So it feels like in the marketplace, there's been this huge birth of like management type platforms. Like I knew of Cloudways a while back ago, but now like there was like all of a sudden like spin up WP. I'm not sure where like Run Cloud fits into that, or GridPane's another new kid on the block. How would you say like Cloudways positions itself in WordPress hosting compared to these other like server management, dashboard admin panels?
Oh, that's an easy one. Everything's already included. You're done. So with a lot of these other services, you're buying one, so you still have to go through the procurement process at WS, pay a separate bill, go through Google Cloud, go through DigitalOcean. You're still doing a lot of the work on setting this up and getting it. Boy, there's a word, provision. That's the word I was looking for, and getting lots of provision, and then you go to another service and are like, okay, now I need to manage this. But now you have, two bills, two throats to choke. I guess that's the phrase. I actually like two heads to kick, but that's still you're dealing with multiple vendors. It's adding, complexity to your basic workflow. You're having to deal with, multiple vendors, and you're not actually saving any money at the end of the day. I know everyone is like, okay, price. Are we just going to dumb everything down so it's cheap as possible? No, I mean, you're going to get value at a certain price point, but do you really need to deal with multiple vendors and multiple headaches throughout, the deployment process?
Yeah. Would you say that like everyone should move to a server management dashboard admin thing like what Cloudways offers? Or like should people like there's a lot of people still in that very managed WordPress thing, like from other people that are all the way in, like GoDaddy land to like Flywheel land, WP engine stuff. But like Cloudways is like another step right down that kind of pathway. Do you think everybody like that's right for everybody, or do you have to feel like you have a certain level of expertise and knowledge before you're ready to make that hop to a management platform like Cloudways is?
You're being very gentle, Stephen. I appreciate it. I got thick skin. Oh, absolutely not. I mean, there are different hosting providers that satisfy certain needs and requirements, and that's okay. It's a huge ecosystem that works for everyone. I do really think, and let this be the controversial statement of the day. I think shared hosting is a mess, and no one wants it anymore. It's been commoditized to a price level which is almost free, but you get what you pay for. So there are going to be silos of different types of managed hosting. You're going to have the kind of like restricted wall gardens that WP VIP, WordPress VIP, and WP Engine have. So everything's totally managed, but you just don't have the flexibility to experiment, uh, do cool things ad hoc, and scale sort of ad hoc like you can at Cloudways. And that's fine though. I mean, if you have an application or a WordPress software, WordPress site, product, whatnot, that fits those confines, great. I mean, can you do that on Cloudways? Sure. Can you do that on WP Engine or VIP? Absolutely. Um, there's a lot of shared hosts out in the world where, you get a ton of flexibility and you get nickel and dime throughout the process. And I'm just going to say you get what you pay for. And one of the big things I think all the sort of, I'm going to lump Cloudways in this mix, all those top tier providers are looking to do is educate agencies, freelancers, even end customers on, okay, you saw something that's $2 a year. $2 a year is kind of ridiculous. So how much work are you going to have to put into that to make sure that it's actually running? There's uptime, there's support, all those, things that you have to have.
Yeah.
Cars these oh, sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. It was just I was eager to get in because I think you're touching some really important points, Robert. Because I see Cloudway for the WordPress implementer, the WordPress freelancer, the WordPress agency, the power user. I see those as the 4 buckets that would be attracted to Cloudways. I also feel that you provide support that is orientated, which is technical support, but it's not so technically in its style that that you need to come from a server background. There's other providers where their technical support, the language that they utilize to reply to tickets is so technical in nature that you need to be coming from a Linux admin background to actually understand the support ticket answers, if you understand what I'm saying. Would you agree with some of the things I've just said, Robert?
Yes, I think there'll never be a reason where you have to go into the terminal and type in ps-aux to figure out what's hanging your site. And for you super Linux geeks, you'll get that joke. But it's just it does it help to have a technical bit of sophistication? Yes, because
Yeah.
that just kind of walks you through the process better. Like, okay,
I don't think Cloudways is really trying to attract the really basic business owner type. I just don't think it's really suitable for, and I don't think you're trying to attract that. Would I be correct?
We are not competing with Wix or Squarespace. That's just not part of the equation. You generally have to have just enough. So the old joke, I ran an agency for 20 years. It was, empowering customers, and then they, know enough to cause a lot of damage. So the beautiful part is we can empower our customers to know enough, and they won't cause that damage because we have to support the user interface, the infrastructure to make sure that they can ask the right questions, but don't have to blow up anything.
Before I throw it over to Stephen again, I've got a little, I want to see what your attitude to this is, Robert. I've got a little bit of a beef with developers that go to clients and say, you've got an e-commerce website, you've got a membership website, you've got a couple of thousand users. I can cut the cost down of the server, drastically. And then they go and they set up something on Amazon Web Services, or they set up something on DigitalOcean, and they control it all. And if they disappear or they fall out the client, nobody knows nothing. Nobody's got the login details. Nobody knows anything about anything. I think that's unprofessional and pushing the boat out a bit too far to suggest that to clients. What's your own feelings about that?
I have plenty of feelings about that. Can we ask that question just a slightly less wide, or narrower, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Because I got plenty. I just want to make sure I answer the right question.
Yeah, sure. Go on. You interpret the way you want it to, Robert.
Oh boy, make me do all the work. So I like to use a car analogy, for a lot of these things. While I'm a computer technical geek engineer by history and experience, I know nothing about cars. My experience with cars is I put a key in, and these days you don't even put a key in. There's like buttons and things. Anyway, it's there's a one-click install for cars. I get in, I'm driving, and that's what I want to have happen. I feel that agencies and developers should have fiduciary responsibility to explain what's going on, even if it's over the head of the customers. And be frank and honest that if I, as a freelancer or an agency, if we get wiped out by earthquake, flood, tornado, meteorite, dinosaurs, you might be in a bit of trouble. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with saying I can't do everything all the time. What is the contingency plan for that? I think educating customers about making sure they ask the right questions. If I get a 1977 used Mercedes-Benz that only runs on diesel, I'm in trouble if I haven't done my homework to realize that, oh, the diesel and the regular petrol are totally two different gases, and I could blow up my engine and screw everything up. So I think it's incumbent upon people who are providing these tools and technologies to make sure they explain all the ramifications of the choices they are making as developers. And you can dumb it down. You don't have to say, well, this is, using this type of PHP caching and, who knows what will happen. We don't need to get that technical. But I think it's fair to say, if you're going to AWS directly, you're going to need someone who is an AWS engineer. Do you want that? If you don't want that, these are the alternatives. And a lot of the managed hosting providers already use AWS, or you can have a more flexible platform like Cloudways, to start at AWS or start at DigitalOcean, and then migrate to different cloud services depending on how your business scales. It's complex, and there are plenty of folks who are just trying to make a couple $100 a month extra on the with their side gig, and aren't going through all the things that I would consider important as having an agency and pushing those things out. Yeah, it costs more. But back to the $2 a year hosting. You get what you pay for, and it's hard to educate people about that. Web stuff is not as visceral as the car analogy. I know if a car's working because I can see all the tires inflated. If they're not, I get it. But I don't know if there's, a WAF for, security. I don't know if there are backups. I don't think about them if I'm an end user.
Yeah.
Good agencies will push that forward. Boy, I just kind of rambled on that, but
No, you were very tactful, but I think you agreed with the basic outline I put to you, and I think you handled it quite well. We're going to go for our break. When we come back, we're going to be delving more into this fascinating world of hosting, how it works with WordPress, with Robert Jacobi. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly this time. I have no idea what I said the first time. Probably that's why I made a balls up of it. And we'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had a fascinating discussion so far. If you want to get the interest of WordPress people, just start talking about either hosting or page builders, and you'll just get an army of listeners.
Did you say Gutenberg?
You did, we're trying to keep this clean, Robert. Before we go into the second part, you just heard a great advert for Launch Flows. I just want to remind you that Launch Flows have been really generous, and they have offered a special deal to the WP tribe. If you go over to WP-Tonic newsletter, you'll see the Launch Flows promotion, and you can get a 30% off their lifetime deal, and that's only offered to the WP-Tonic tribe. So, Robert, obviously your title, Director of WordPress at Cloudways, how important is WordPress seen in the higher management at Cloudways? Is your relationship with WordPress and the WordPress community seen as being very important in the Cloudways company?
Yes, Next question. No, I'm kidding. Yes, it is. This role exists really to make sure that we have that focus, that we're spending the time, the corporate resources, not only to engage. I mean, that's just engage is a fancy word for marketing and sales, but really take in the feedback and apply it internally, and that's across a lot of things. So not only is it, how do we manage the product and the solution, the WordPress product solution that we have at Cloudways, how do we make that easier? How do we, tie it into specific types of users, but really taking a lot of the open source advocacy that exists in the WordPress community and bring it internally. So I've been in the open source space almost, well, certainly for over 15 plus years. And there are a lot of cool things that happen in open source that you don't see anywhere else. When I say anywhere else, that you don't typically see in corporate environments. And bringing those bits of passion, those bits of, how can we ideate quickly? How can we move, forward while not, you know, how we can still be backwards compatible, for lack of a better phrase. These are really important things, and being able to take those topics back and forth between the community, between customers, between partners, and obviously Cloudways as a whole, it's a critical component of what we're doing with WordPress at Cloudways.
That's great. Over to you, Stephen.
So I'm a part of quite a few different WordPress groups and boards and stuff. And one of the huge conversations that's happening right now around WordPress is speed. Like everybody is just like obsessed with speed these days, it seems like. And there's a lot of like chatter and talk about light speed and this caching plugin or this hosting plug or this host, this server or whatever. I know you guys have your own caching plugin. I think it's called Breezy. How does that work? How does it stack up against, let's say, something like Lightspeed or just some out of the box thing that you get from Flywheel, so you don't even know what it does, but it's caching something somewhere.
somewhere.
Wow, that was that's way too technical for me. It works. It's great. I use it. I play with it. It's a caching plugin. It integrates as well with Varnish. I want to tie something back to what you said about all the performance stuff. I mean, it's not just speed that people talk about. The technical folk will really get into like PHP workers and CDNs and different types of caching, or so you can look at Redis, Varnish, all these things. What's nice at Cloudways is there's a flexibility to utilize what you want in a lot of cases. That doesn't imply it definitely means that if you're technical enough, you can actually take advantage of a lot of cutting edge tech, which if you're looking at sort of that managed restricted hosting, you're locked into what you can do there. We do offer things out of the box as well to make that onboarding process a lot easier. So if you need a caching plugin, which everyone should have, I don't care what you use, certainly our tool works. People have different, opinions on, what they should be using. That's fine. And we offer that level of flexibility. But you're not going to be left high and dry by just getting in and using, sort of our default caching. So that's awesome. Do you want to really?
That's super cool.
I mean, do you want to geek out and have multiple levels of caching and different types of tools? Yeah, go for it. I'm not the right person to ask about that because I don't know how that that's a level of Here's the thing.
I think that's one of the beautiful things.
Stephen's dream is to go deep into that, Robert. That would be like a pig in shit, basically.
I was just gonna say that I think that's one of the awesome things about Cloudways. Is kind of what I was saying at the beginning of this podcast. Like Cloudways provided this whole infrastructure for me to jump into server like kind of management ideas and hosting and caching, and then like provided this, I can use the off the shelf stuff. And then all of a sudden I can start customizing stuff and I can start tweaking stuff and I can go as far as I want to go. And then I can come back and, be like, all right, that's far enough. That's all I want to learn right now. And that's a really beautiful thing.
I mean, you can do that for fun because sometimes geeks like us do that for fun. But I mean, there are obviously business cases where it makes sense to go in one direction or another. And the business case might be, how staffed up is your internal team? How much can you offload just, automatically? Are you going to outsource to another system admin? You can tweak it up. And, really at the end of the day, I just, it's the scalability and the flexibility that I don't think other providers, sure, I'll get some hate mail on Twitter. But we do it in a way I think that just makes it a bit more friendly and accessible. I mean, yes, I could build all this out on Google Cloud or DigitalOcean, and yeah, but I'm also gonna have to hire a system admin at $150,000 a year to make sure that not only is that installed, but that it's running day to day, correctly. And
Yeah.
we don't all
I've got a question before we wrap up the podcast part of the show, and then we go on to bonus content, which you'll be able to listen and watch on the MailRight Facebook group page, or no, on the Facebook page of the WP-Tonic.
somewhere on Facebook.
Yeah, somewhere on Facebook. Yeah, that's right. Now, obviously, Vulture has become the darling. Vulture and its high frequency servers have become the darling of the YouTube, WordPress, Digiati crowd, as I would put it. But their downtimes compared to DigitalOcean, I'm sure you've had these discussions internally, have been slightly worrying, and also the way they have dealt publicly with their downtimes has been, how to put it this diplomatically, slightly criticised. How do you see Vulture and the company and their setup compared to Amazon Web Services or DigitalOcean?
Ooh, boy. Can we go back to how lovingly you say the word darling?
Well, they have become the darling of a certain Digiati on YouTube, haven't they?
Yes, they have. It's a hard one, right? I mean, because we'll get that same feedback when like AWS East Coast goes down for like a day, and we don't have control over those providers at the end of the day. I mean, their infrastructure and their maintenance and support of that and uptimes are as good as they can keep them going. I think most people, this is my personal anecdotal experience of Cloudways users, are very comfortable going with DigitalOcean, AWS, or if they have the budgets, Google Cloud. They get those providers, they understand them very well. Linode is its own little thing. So the folks that understand Linode, and I'm going to now dump Vulture into the same group. The folks that understand Linode and Vulture know the pros and cons of using one of those providers, at their core infrastructure. So one, I think they are continually improving, especially on the uptime side of the universe. But by their very nature, they are, and you said it perfectly. I mean, there's that Digerati that totally gets Vulture. It's like, this is awesome, super high frequency. Yeah, but if you're already in that space thinking that way, then you're going to have to use one of these providers, and you're not, and you understand that there are those blips, let's call them. I don't want to use risks, but blips that occur with that. And the typical end user, typical agency is not at that level. They're not looking for that kind of stuff. And speed, frankly, I just want to cover speed as a whole. That is getting commoditized all over the place. So you can go, to Bluehost, GoDaddy,
Oh
anyone.
God, my temperature's just gone up. Did you have to do that, Robert? My temperature's just increased. You got me hot and bothered now. Did you have to do that, Robert?
I didn't say host.
Oh,
I
God
said,
almighty. Freaking
oh,
Ada, but
you
all
know what?
right.
And now the email is going to come because I know all these folks very well. And I'm not trying to, and quite the contrary. It's there's a race to commoditizing speed. At some point, hosting is not going to be the issue, and in a lot of cases, hosting is not the issue. If I'm in rural America with my mobile phone trying to get a site, hosting's not the problem. That last mile is a problem. So that level of performance is really evening out, over the long term. And what kind of value can we add on top of that? So as a customer, you want to be secure, safe, don't waste a lot of time on things you don't want to waste. So it's great that we have 5 different providers where you can, geographically put up things wherever you want. Um, but we spend a lot of time talking about speed. All the hosting companies, certainly Cloudways, but really all the hosting companies are in a mind space that we will get down to zero time. So that the bottleneck won't be at the host. All the ones who care about infrastructure and getting content out there, that's going to be zero time. So where do we move, in the next iteration of hosting sites on the web? Certainly, there are going to be providers that don't give two poops about, okay, I got a site on, got your site up, good luck. All the ones who care realize that the conversation that's happening in WordPress about speed and performance, well, you guys are already about a year behind what all the hosting companies are already talking about. We're past that. We know that that is a critical piece of infrastructure that will be commoditized. Everyone will have zero, let's put that in quotes, you know, zero speed bottlenecks at some point, whether that's, today for Cloudways, tomorrow for someone else or whatnot. So as we move forward in time, what's the experience? What's the value add? How do we take friction out of the engineering experience? How do we take friction out of the consumer experience? How do we take it out of the agency experience? Make those things easier. Like let's jump all the way back to cars. How much software is in your car today that wasn't there 10 years ago? I mean, are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. We don't think about, RPMs. We don't think about horsepower. I mean, with electric cars, horsepower doesn't exist anymore. It's not even a real concept. It's, torque. Oh, infinite torque on an electric car. So all these things, technology moves us forward, and the things that we were measuring ourselves against 10, 15, 20 years ago, that's just expected, and that just better be there. So it better be, 5 nines of uptime. It better be, zero point 0.1 milliseconds to, first byte. That's just going to be expected. So uh, everything else is where I feel the good hosting companies are providing value.
I thought that was well put. Thanks for that, Robert. We need to wrap up the podcast part of the show. We're going to continue this discussion. Robert's agreed to stay on. You'll be able to watch all this interview plus the bonus content on the WP-Tonic Facebook page. Got it right this time. If you really want to support, if you really want to support the show, go over to WP-Tonic newsletter. Sign up for our weekly newsletter that gives you all the in-depth news about our controversial but fun roundtable show. So, Robert, what is the best way to learn more about Cloudways and definitely more about you and your thoughts in the world of hosting and WordPress?
Certainly, cloudways.com. You can find us at Cloudways on Twitter. You can also find me at Robert Jacobi on Twitter. And I am open for all sorts of DMs and chats and whatnot. I'm happy to engage. I love open source. I love WordPress. I love the hosting communities and spaces as a whole. And yeah, I'm happy to engage. I get weird invites on my calendar for 5, 6 in the morning because I've decided that sleeping is not an option anymore.
Oh, well, that's great news. Let's see how long you last.
Great news for you.
Stephen, how can people find out more about you, your thoughts, and your company, Stephen?
Yeah, head over to zipfish.io and check out what we're all about.
Like I say, we're going to wrap up. If you want to watch the bonus content, go over to the WP-Tonic Facebook page and you'll be able to see the whole interview again, and plus the bonus content. We'll be back next week with another great guest, another great conversation around the world of WordPress, online marketing, and everything to do with tech. We will be back next week, folks. Bye. So now the company Cloudways, you're incorporated in Malta, but I understand the founders and most of your technical team are based in Pakistan, and you incorporated in Malta for European regulation reasons. And would I be correct about that? But the core of the company is based in Pakistan. Is that correct?
Yep. Most of the team is based directly out of Karachi, actually.
Right. So what's it been like incorporating in Malta, and dealing with all the legal side of that comes with hosting in a way? Is it a bit more complicated than most people think?
Luckily, that is not my problem.
I'm going to throw it over. I'm going to throw it over to Steve, and then I love that.
Just bringing it back to WordPress a little bit here. I would love to know what your thoughts are on where WordPress is right now and where it's going. Do you feel like things are diverging and becoming more split apart, or is WordPress becoming more unified as things are moving forward? I feel like as I look behind the rearview mirror, sometimes I get this feeling that like, oh man, like things are very chaotic. But then like, hey, we're in an open source, platform here, and things are always a little chaotic when you're doing open source stuff, and that's part of the beauty of it.
Can I answer that before Robert does? Basically, it's doing both things at the same time, Robert. Stephen and Robert, what do you reckon, Robert?
Yes, the answer is both are happening at the same time. So here's kind of how I see the word WordPress being utilized. It's turning into that term, that you had in the 70s and 80s, and probably I'm the only one who is old enough to remember that. Everything was Xerox. You could get a copier from anyone, but it was, people would say, just Xerox this or Xerox that. I see that in the next few years, that WordPress, because of its utilization and usage on the web, it's just going to become really simple. Like, did you WordPress that? Can you throw that up on WordPress? And people won't really understand the technology aspect of it, but it's going to become the word that describes the medium of getting content easily up on the internet. And I think that at 9 times out of 10, WordPress will be involved in that conversation, whether it's, headless, whether it's, and this word has been bouncing around my brain for a couple months, headful. So headless, headful, whatever it is, as a tool set, that there's going to be this core thing, like, we really know what WordPress is. Yes. Okay. There's going to be folks that are just tied to this 15 plus year history of WordPress, and going everything from the class getter to Gutenberg. But even those discussions are kind of funny when you think about how the API and headless are changing that dynamic entirely. I mean, you can actually have WordPress being, what's a good word for it? What's a middle head? I mean, if you look at kind of a stack, you can actually have it being headless in both directions. So you can have a headless administrator. You can have the core that manages explicit bits of content and functionality, and then you can also have the front end headless portion of it. So WordPress Hydra, copyright Robert Jacobi. So you can actually have this multi-headed. I'm hold on. I'm just gonna get that domain name. You can have this kind of environment.
Buy it through GoDaddy.
I hope they're a sponsor.
I don't think they ever. They did at one time. I was in talks with them. Thank God it never worked out, because I will never have them as a sponsor of my show.
I'm not going to touch that. I know plenty of good folks at GoDaddy.
Well, yeah, I do. This is bonus content, so I can be a little bit more direct. There's some fabulous people working at GoDaddy. It's the founder who's still on the board. He's an elephant killer. He's somebody that I despise as a human being. For moral reasons, I would be a total hypocrite if I took their money, Robert.
Oh, that's fair. I get.
So it's more moral. As long as he has any financial interest, or his family have any interest in GoDaddy, I will never take their money.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I will be Googling shortly about what you just said. Now you got me thinking.
Go. So now let's go on.
So now I'm already like,
Yeah, no, but let's talk about something also controversial. Gutenberg. I think my comments have been misunderstood in some ways, even though I've been quite direct with my views about the Gutenberg project. I'm actually totally for it. It's just been the way it's been handled and the way it's been consistently, in my opinion, badly communicated to the wider WordPress community. But on the other hand, some of the, you could point out to me, it's fine for me to criticize. I'm not trying to do major engine maintenance on a plane when it's still flying. So it's fine for me to criticize them. But where do you think how somebody deep in the WordPress community, how have you observed the Gutenberg project, and what would be your views about how it's been managed? Only a slight question, Robert.
So there are two sides to that coin. I'll go with the easy one. I love Gutenberg. I think if you're not using Gutenberg, you are on a train to nowhere. It from just a tech. Let's ignore the whole backwards compatibility, ease of use, whatever other issues. When I come at Gutenberg from a geek perspective, I absolutely love it. For me, what it begins is, which I think is personally very important, the atomization of content. So right now it's fluffy. I'm stage one, MVP, however you want to, depending on your mood, define Gutenberg. But what it's doing, and what I hope will be something that progresses into the future, is when you're editing and adding content via Gutenberg, via all that it is listening to what is going on, and listening in giant AI quotes to what's going on. And, oh, look, that's a paragraph. That's a bit of atomic data. If I could take a WordPress post and have it split up into, the 30 to 100 bits of atomic data, that means all those bits and pieces I can repurpose, reutilize, monetize, recommunicate in different ways. I find it absolutely fascinating and exciting from a totally geeky perspective, because right now we just have these giant chunks of data thrown into the database, and it's a goddamn crap storm. If you look at the WordPress tables and you see what's in the options, for Pete's sake, why is everything comment delimited? comma delimited in a single cell. That's absolutely inappropriate database utilization. Period. Data in a cell should be atomic in any table. So there's a crap fest of information that's being thrown into the WordPress database. My hope is that that progresses and becomes smarter and more efficient. And I think Gutenberg from the content side is totally exciting about it. And the user interface aspects of it, that's fine. That's if we look at our old school MVC kind of stuff, that's the view. We can fix that. We can tweak that. We can do whatever we want with it. On the open source, is that plenty on that side? Because I can really ramble on. I love Gutenberg for probably.
I can tell. I'm not so in UX design terms so enamored with it.
That's fair, and that can change.
But I understand its necessity. I'm just critical of the way it's been handled and the management style and communication style of how the project has been handled. Robert, over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, I think you're like really hit the nail on the head there. It's just like where Gutenberg goes from here, the possibilities of how it functions and works and what it means to handling data and blogs and CMS and shopping and everything the web has to offer is really interesting and really exciting to see what's going to happen the next 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years down the road after it becomes even more mature. Is going to be absolutely fascinating, especially because it's an open source thing. And how are people going to use this? What are they going to build on top of this? And the ability that people now have to like get into that data and pull things out and tweak things and change things has just like blown wide open compared to whatever it was before.
So this is completely hypothetical, but Automatic runs WordPress for all intents and purposes. We get into the politics in like 17,000 different podcasts. But Automatic now owns Tumblr, or they have for last year. Boy, I could easily see where there'd be a Tumblr plugin in Gutenberg, which would literally just break out every single sentence or every single paragraph in that blog post, and then all of a sudden just drop it in as a whole thread. I mean, that's the power of Gutenberg, is that the data becomes more meaningful and atomic and can be repurposed in weird, interesting ways. You can do the same thing with Twitter. You can just, there's all these cool things that I feel that, once devs really get a hold of the understanding of it, and to some degree that the database infrastructure can actually support a little bit better. It was just, to me, it's breaking open the sort of restrictions of that original WordPress architecture, which has really been unchanged in 15 years. So onto the communication level, because I know Jonathan's itching to get at this. I worked at an open source, volunteered at Joomla, which for a number of years was, neck. I don't know if that's a good cross or a bad cross. Like, is that
you're getting me going again? You mentioned, oh dear, right?
I don't think you realize it. I was president of Joomla briefly as well.
Oh God!
So, and open source politics as a whole it's not anything like what business is used to. Yeah. Open source, everyone has a voice. It, however small it may be, everyone's got a voice in it. And, across all sorts of projects. I've worked with Drupal, Joomla, obviously WordPress, other projects, and the smallest voice can actually get a lot of play. Whereas if you're an Amazon and you're the smallest voice at Amazon, well, thank you very much, you're fired. So the politics can get easily amplified, and what people fail to realize is that most of these projects, 99.99% of the people are not getting paid a penny to be there. And you can say, you know, you get what you pay for it. That's not fair because there are brilliant people across all these projects, but they also have to have day jobs and, you know, pay the other bills. So, you know, there may be something going on about this is going to be so awesome. We're going to get this out there, you know, especially on the tech side of open source projects. People get really excited about just pushing something out there. And then a week later, like, oh shit, we should have told people we're going to do this. Well, you know, yes, because it's even in the best run open source projects, it's just hard to do on a consistent basis. It's not like a company where everyone is being literally forced to work together because people get fired. You don't get fired from open source projects easily, you know. So
We get excommunicated. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Robert. Hopefully you agree to come back on the WP-Tonic show. It's been a blast. We need to wrap it up, Robert. Robert, and Stephen needs to get back to managing his business, and so do I. We'll be back next week with another great guest, another great conversation. We'll see you soon, tribe. See you later. Bye.